and then the drones would come down and...
Please take your time. We're incredibly grateful that you're making the time to be here today.
We repeatedly saw children who had a single bullet wound to the head, sometimes to the chest, but no other injuries. I find it astonishing that despite all the evidence, because my evidence is not the first evidence that these things are happening. It's been there for many, many months. It's what the UN is saying, what WHO is saying, Amnesty International, Oxfam, everybody. And the lack of any concrete action from my government makes me feel deeply ashamed. As you know, international journalists are not allowed into Gaza. The journalists that are there, the local journalists, are targeted relentlessly by the Israeli army. I believe the latest number is something like 174 killed. And indeed, while we were there, a press tent within Al-Aqsa Hospital compound was hit by a missile strike with 5 journalists killed. So it's very, very difficult to get information out. And I think the Western media are always concerned that if they're hearing something from a Palestinian in Gaza, whether it's likely to be accurate, it usually is in my experience. But they tend to find international observers in one way or the other more credible for their purposes. So for doctors and nurses who are working in Gaza and coming out, I think it's absolutely vital to fulfill that function of saying, this is the reality, this is what we saw, and to keep saying it over and over again. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that there's persistent and deliberate targeting of children. There have been 32 doctors and nurses in the UK who wrote to the Prime Minister saying exactly that. 99 doctors and nurses in the US who wrote to Biden in October saying precisely that. My experience while I was there was that we repeatedly saw children who had a single bullet wound to the head, sometimes to the chest, but no other injuries. So these were not likely to be children who'd been brought up in crossfire or injured in a bomb blast. It seemed to us that this was clear and deliberate targeting of sometimes very, very young children. I've worked in a number of conflict zones. My colleagues similarly had done. One of my colleagues had worked in over 50 different missions across the world, been to Ukraine 5 times. We all felt that this was a situation that was so much more worse than anything we'd ever seen. And I think that will have affected all of us very significantly. But we're the lucky ones. We were able to leave. And I think we all felt very guilty at the fact that we were able to leave, and we left behind Palestinian colleagues who couldn't leave and who've been enduring it not for a month, but for over a year now, with no immediate end in sight. I think we all want to go back and help a bit more if we can.